When you sit in silence, you are not merely avoiding noise, you are stepping beyond time itself. This silence is not emptiness, it is a gateway to something vast, something that words will always fail to contain. The moment you try to define it, you reduce it. Language is limited, shifting from one meaning to another, but what exists beyond words cannot be confined. Silence is not an absence, it is presence, pure and boundless. It is the space where awareness awakens, where the self dissolves into something greater. The mind is only a lens through which the body is known. But when the mind itself disappears, what remains is neither mind nor body, only existence, infinite and whole. In silence, a doorway opens. The mind is a restless current, always moving, always filled with sound. A silent mind is a contradiction. True silence exists only in the absence of mind. Silence is the canvas on which both sound and stillness appear, the space in which awareness deepens. The gaps between words are not empty, they are alive with presence. Consciousness itself is found in the spaces between thoughts. What is infinite cannot be spoken, cannot be thought. It simply is. Beyond the limits of belief, beyond the body, beyond even the concept of self, there is a vast and formless reality. It does not need to be understood, only entered. For lifetimes upon lifetimes, the mind has been molded by conditioning, shaping the illusion of self. Instead of resting in the vastness of pure awareness, we have come to see ourselves as confined, trapped within a body, bound by an environment, defined by a world, a universe. In doing so, we have unknowingly built the walls of our own prison. And yet the key to freedom is paradoxical. We do not become free by trying to free ourselves. Any effort to escape only tightens the chains. The moment we seek liberation, we reinforce the illusion that we are bound. True freedom is not found through struggle, but through stillness, through silence, peace, compassion, and an open heart. Consciousness is beyond conditioning. Thoughts do not define you. The mind moves like the wind, restless and ever-changing. But you are not the wind. You are the vast sky in which it blows. Trying to silence the mind through force only breeds frustration. But when left alone, like ripples in a still pond, thoughts settle on their own. Silence is not mere emptiness, it is the space where clarity is born. In this silence, the mind dissolves, revealing what has always been true. You were never bound to begin with. There is no separate self to imprison or to free. The very idea of bondage was only a mirage. To awaken to this is to surrender, not to something outside of yourself, but to your own deepest being. All identification with the small, limited self must be let go. Doubts, fears, and rigid beliefs, release them. Let them burn away in the fire of truth. Freedom is not something to be attained. It is what already is. The illusion of self dissolves the moment you stop clinging to it. The world you see is but a projection of the mind. Break free from the illusion, and what remains? Only pure, boundless awareness. Only truth. Only you. The path of surrender takes many forms, shaped by the heart's calling. For some, it is devotion, a bowing before the divine, a dissolving into love. The Bhakta surrenders to a guru or deity, the Christian to Christ, the Buddhist to Buddha, the Jew to the prophets, the Hindu to Krishna, Shiva, or the formless absolute, the Muslims to Allah. Others walk the path of knowledge, seeking truth through self-inquiry, turning inward to the silent witness, the unchanging self. But the essence of surrender is the same, no matter the path. To surrender is to empty oneself, to offer up the burdens of mind and ego, allowing what is false to fade. This surrender purifies, stripping away illusion, making space for clarity, for freedom. In giving everything to the divine, whatever form it may take, one steps into a higher understanding, a peace untouched by circumstance. Problems lose their weight, limitations crumble, and what remains is lightness, an effortless joy. Surrender is not about effort, not about fixing or changing oneself. It is the opposite, letting be. It is the quiet undoing of the self-made prison. Humility, love, and peace are its gateways. To say, "Not my will but thine," is to release personal striving and allow life to unfold as it must. Desires, ambitions, attachments, all are offered up, not out of loss, but out of trust. And to whom do we surrender? For some, it is to a guru, a deity, or a guiding force beyond the self. For others, it is to the deeper self within, the true guru, ever present. To surrender is to see that you are never the doer, that life moves on its own. It is the dissolving of I and mine, the recognition that what you truly are is beyond name, beyond form, beyond all grasping. Whether through devotion or knowledge, the destination is the same. The illusion of separateness fades, and what remains is only pure awareness, boundless and free. Surrender is the complete release of all that you have clung to, your desires, your fears, your very sense of self. It is standing before the divine empty-handed, saying, "Take everything, my life, my attachments, my worries, my joys. I seek only you." This is perfect surrender. Nothing held back, nothing kept for oneself. True surrender is not a transaction, it is the dissolving of the illusion that there was ever anything to hold on to in the first place. The separate self, with all its plans, needs, and anxieties, is nothing but a fleeting shadow. To surrender is to step beyond that shadow, to relinquish not just what you do not want, but also what you most cherish, your very identity, your deepest attachments. Fear resists this letting go. It whispers of loss, of emptiness, of annihilation. But fear itself is part of the illusion, a trick of the mind clinging to control. When surrender is complete, fear vanishes, for there is no longer anyone left to be afraid. Surrender is not something to be achieved. Any effort to surrender only strengthens the illusion of a separate self that must do something. Instead, surrender happens effortlessly, spontaneously, like a sigh at the end of a long struggle. One simply stops resisting, one simply lets be. One does not need to wait for surrender. It is not a process or a practice that unfolds over time. It happens in an instant. The moment the false self is set aside, the true self is revealed. When you trust the force that knows the way, the universe can take over. When this happens, problems dissolve, not because they have been solved, but because the one who suffered them is no longer grasping at them. Life moves as it always has, but now there is peace. The ego, which carried the weight of the world, is gone. And what remains? Only freedom. Not something gained, but something recognized, because freedom was never absent. It is the natural state, always present beneath the noise of the mind. When the mind is quiet, the self shines forth. Fear disappears, concerns melt away, and what is left is something boundless, something luminous, something that was always here, waiting to be seen. As you turn inward, a profound realization may arise. Your life has already been set in motion long before your arrival, unfolding with a precision beyond your grasp. Everything, where you go, who you meet, what you experience, will happen as it must. You are not the doer, you have never been. This understanding is not a constraint but a liberation. It means you do not need to fight, struggle, or strive to shape yourself into something. You were never here to become, only to be. Not a title, not a role, not an identity, but existence itself. When you silence the mind, when you release expectations and surrender control, life moves effortlessly as it was always meant to. In that stillness, you find yourself precisely where you need to be, encountering the exact moments that nurture your growth and fulfillment. Surrender is not about giving up in defeat. It is about giving up the false belief that you must hold everything together. You let go, not of life, but of your attachment to limits, your illusion of imperfection, your belief that something is wrong. In doing so, you recognize the truth. You are already what you seek. Surrender happens mentally. It's the act of freeing yourself from the stories you've created about yourself, the roles you've adopted, the labels you've embraced, the desires that push you in every direction. It's about letting go of the idea that these things define you and simply allowing them to dissolve into nothing. This shift is not about fixing the world around you, nor about fixing yourself. It is about seeing clearly that you were never broken, never separate. By turning within, you step beyond reaction, beyond effort, into the space where peace, joy, and freedom naturally arise. You are not the body, nor the mind, but the awareness in which these appear. The mind weaves problems out of its own illusions, attaching them to a fleeting sense of I. But when this illusion dissolves, understanding arises, not through effort, not through thinking, but spontaneously, as light emerges when clouds part. Life is not meant to be controlled, it is meant to be lived. And when you stop grasping, stop interfering, stop trying to steer the currents, you float. You find yourself carried effortlessly, not by fate, not by force, but by the very flow of existence itself. When one comes to know the self, that same self is reflected in all things. The world no longer appears as a fragmented illusion, but as a seamless expression of reality itself. Peace, harmony, bliss, and joy arise effortlessly, not as fleeting emotions, but as the natural state of being. Self-surrender is the release of all attachments, ego, identity, possessions, body, and thoughts offered to the one true self, or God. It is not an action, but a quiet, inner surrender, a relinquishment of the illusion of control. When everything is given up, everything is taken care of. A higher intelligence guides life without interference. In this state, suffering dissolves. Problems no longer hold weight, and the mind is freed from anxiety and sorrow. Life flows in perfect harmony, untouched by struggle. The burden of responsibility lifts, replaced by effortless grace. Happiness is no longer sought, it simply is. Sitting in silence, absorbed in the infinite, one directly experiences the bliss of pure being. It becomes clear that nothing external can compare to this joy, for it is not dependent on anything. It is what you are. This realization is the true progress of the spiritual path. The self is pure awareness, unbound by the limitations of mind and body. When the self is recognized, the illusion of separation dissolves. There is no longer an individual I to act, strive, or achieve. Surrender is not an effort, nor is it something to be attained. It is simply allowing the self to be as it is. It is the quiet letting go of the idea that a separate I must do anything at all.